So now we're going to talk about the profit for your product. So first of all, we have to start with revenue, and revenue isn't price. Revenue and turnover are almost the same thing. So one thing that we often talk about is wholesale turnover, and that reflects the journey that a product makes from your factory to your customer. So you produce it in your factory, you transport that product to a retailer, and then the retailer sells that on to the customer, and the government takes a chunk in tax. So this is with a physical product. Obviously with software it's a bit different, but so wholesale turnover is the price, the MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price, minus the tax, usually VAT, 20% average in Europe, minus the distribution charges, the shipping charge of getting it to your retailer, and minus the retailer fee, which is usually a percentage. The net revenue is that wholesale turnover minus any discounts that you want to apply, sales and things like that. So we can look at that in this situation from now on. We're going to use a hypothetical example of a $30,000 or euro or pound car. So that's kind of average for certainly the European marketplace. So we can see if it's $30,000 MSRP, then we can take away the 20% VAT, we can take away a small distribution charge, we can take away the percentage fee that the dealer or the retailer is making, and what you got left is the wholesale turnover. That's the first revenue. And in this case, you can see that the dealer is on a $30,000 car is probably only making about $3,000. Then we have to take into consideration any planned discounts or sales or incentives, and that leaves you with the net revenue. And we can also consider different industries, for example, restaurants or software. So here you have no transport costs and no dealer costs. So naturally your wholesale turnover and your net revenue are higher. So far, up until this point, everything that we've done, so we talked about innovation, we talked about customer research, we talked about understanding the market and the positioning, the pricing, all of that has been pretty low cost. It's basically just your time doing the research, thinking of ideas, building a concept and a product and pricing structure. But what you're going to do after this step is kicking off engineering, production, and marketing. And those are three really big cost centers in most organizations. So you're going to be committing significant company resources to developing your product. And so you want to make sure that's a good idea, and for sure your management want to make sure that's a good idea, which is why it's worth building a realistic business case first, understanding really how much profit you're going to make from this point on. So there's two types of costs. There's variable cost, and that's cost per object. So that's parts, labor, support for service, any consumables. It's really the direct things which go into making and supplying that object. So again, in our $30,000 euro car case, we can see that the variable cost is coming directly from making that product, all the raw materials and components and labor from building the car. And every extra car you make will carry that cost again. So you can see here in this situation, in this case it's about 80%, so 70 to 80% of the wholesale turnover of the car is that cost, is that variable cost. So that's somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 or euros. It's a huge amount. And if you think that minimum amount can't really be massively reduced, that's why small cars like city cars really struggle to make money at all, because that variable cost doesn't change a huge amount depending on the size of the car. So you subtract away that variable cost from the net revenue, and then what you get is the marginal profit. So that's really the profit each car is making, and you want to make sure that's always positive. You never want to be selling a car, or ideally never want to be selling a car or product or service where marginally you're not making money. In this case, it's about, in our example, it's about 10% of the wholesale turnover. And we reflect that as a percentage of wholesale turnover or as a physical amount. So in this case, about 2,000 euros. So A great way of improving your profit is to reduce your variable cost. Has a direct impact on how much profit you're making. And if we go back to those other examples of the restaurant and software, so the variable cost for a restaurant is probably pretty big, all the ingredients and things. But the variable cost for software is almost nothing. So the marginal profit from a software company is huge compared to any of the physical industries. The other type of cost is a fixed cost, what's called an overhead. So this is things which it doesn't change depending on how many of the product or service you're selling. So the things like advertising, designing, testing, tooling and equipment. So in our hypothetical situation, you share that cost across the number of items you'll make. So selling more products or more services, you're effectively reducing the amount of that fixed cost per car or per product, per service. So because it's huge numbers, millions, but distributed across hundreds of thousands, the number doesn't look so big when you look at it on a per unit basis. So in this case, if we subtract away those fixed costs, then we end up with an operational profit. So in reality, if you think that this journey that we've gone on so far, we started with a 30,000 euro or dollar car to the customer. The dealer's maybe making 3,000, but the company is only making 1,000 to 2,000 at the end of the day. So if we go back to our other examples of restaurant and software, the restaurant has quite big overheads, quite big fixed costs for things like the payment of the chefs and the waiters and things. So you can see that many restaurants go out of business. They struggle to make a profit. By comparison, software companies, yes, they have to pay some engineers to do the coding, but remember that the development cycles are quite short. And also there's no other massive investment in terms of hardware. There's no tooling, there's no physical thing that most software companies have to buy. So software companies can make huge operating profits. But it's not quite that simple. You can't just look at it like this. You have to consider the impacts of time. And so that's what we're going to talk about in our next video. Thanks.